How does this play out of the overall spectrum of the election?
It's a great question, Lester, because we have seen former President Trump try to capitalize on these cases that Laura is talking about, including the one that we just got from the Supreme Court. And he has vowed to pardon some of those who rioted, who have been charged, who've pleaded guilty to their actions on January 6th. He's trying to energize his base of supporters with that type of language. We saw that last night at the debate. By the way, we've spent so much time talking about this debate, the fact that President Biden had what so many have referred to as a halting performance last night. But former President Trump spent time talking about those rioters, the people who stormed the Capitol that day. And so the question is, how will that play, politically speaking? Will that alienate independent voters? Will that alienate some of the voters that former President Trump would need in these key battleground states if he wants to win? Right now, polls show that he does have a narrow lead in battleground states and nationally within the margin of error. But this is one of those issues, Lester, that for people in the suburbs, people who are in those swing states and swing counties does not play well, who are watching all of this unfold very quickly, again, may be effective at energizing his base. And the big outstanding question, what Laura refers to, how might this impact the case that former President Trump is facing? That remains to be seen. But again, politically speaking, he has tried to use this as a weapon. Let's bring Danny Cevallos, NBC legal analyst, here into this conversation. Could this potentially mean new trials for some of these defendants?
Yes, it could. But under these facts, what happened procedurally is that the case has now been returned to the district court's decision on it, which concluded that this was not a valid application of this statute. This entire case could be boiled down to one word, and that word is otherwise, and how we interpret that word otherwise, because federal law says you can't tamper with documents to impair their use at a congressional proceeding. That's not the charge here. The charge here is the next line in the federal law, which is or otherwise interferes basically with that congressional proceeding. And that's what this battle was. Does otherwise impair mean any way in the world that you could possibly obstruct a congressional proceeding? Or is it defined by the line that came immediately before it, which speaks of tampering with documents, with evidence? And the majority concluded that no, otherwise cannot be read that broadly. But here's how close a call it was. Justice Barrett's dissenting opinion reaches the opposite conclusion about the use of the word otherwise. And she says that, well, look, Congress does what Congress wants. And if Congress wanted to use the word otherwise and give this law this sweeping reach that could cover almost anything that obstructs a congressional proceeding, then that was their prerogative and that was their choice. So it's a really interesting look. And as Laura pointed out, this is split and fractured among ideological lines. You saw Justice Jackson joining with the majority, but ultimately, this comes down to a very interesting interpretation of criminal law, whether Congress has the power to simply use the word otherwise and cover such a giant swath of criminal activity.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.